On today's show, I'm talking with Nathan Kontny about how you can make your business more personal and connect with customers personally. Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Racky, and today I'm joined by Nathan Kontny. He is a two-time Y-Combinator alumni and creator of the writing software Draft, but you may know him best as the CEO of Highrise, a CRM that spun off of Basecamp, in which he's been running now for about 3 years. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited to get into it and talk to you about some of this stuff. So, first of all, for those that aren't aware, about 3 years ago, Jason Fried from Basecamp, who I'm sure most people have heard of, announced on their blog Signal versus Noise that Highrise was being spun off as its own separate company. And after a few failed attempts of having it acquired, they instead chose to bring in someone to take over and run Highrise. That person was you. It's a fascinating story for a few reasons, and I think most of all is the value of relationships and how to properly nurture them over time, which is what you did. So I'd love to kind of just kick it off and maybe tell me the story of like how you met Jason Fried.
Yeah, so, right. This is one of those like, hey, if you follow this, it's going to happen to you kind of things. But yeah, I agree. There's a lot of interesting things I think to kind of pull from this. I've been for years now running my own businesses. We were in the second class of Y-Combinator back in the beginning of 2016. So it was like the second class of Y-Combinator ever. I've done Y-Combinator now a couple times, and I ended up, the first time, I really liked how that turned out. It was acquired by my partner and kind of spun off into some other stuff. We did Y-Combinator again, try to do something, different. That didn't work out. But I've just been still kind of building businesses. I kind of took the failures of that second attempt at Y-Combinator, built Draft, which took off well. And just in this whole process, I've met a ton of people along the way. And one of those people has just been a lot of folks at Basecamp, like Jason Fried. We meet at parties and, have a conversation about startups. And yeah, I've never really had, given him a hard ask for anything. But when I made Draft, I knew that it was something that he'd probably be interested in, given his relationship with writing. He's such a strong writer and promotes writing is such an important element to the people he hires. So that's when I asked him, I'm just like, well, hey, would you like to come in as an advisor? Just chew the shit and talk about product features. Nothing stressful. It wasn't for money. Wasn't asking for some formal relationship. Just you want to get together and chat about it. You might like to look at this product. And he was totally game for it. We did that. So then just had this relationship over the course of months, kind of going over, stuff I was doing with Draft. Just out of nowhere. I knew they had spun off Highrise. They were trying to kind of focus on Basecamp, and I knew they were looking for someone to acquire Highrise. And yeah, the tough sell of Highrise was they didn't want to get rid of any of their people. So Highrise had to kind of come without a team, and nobody really wanted that. So they were kind of faced with, well, we should spin it off and find someone to kind of build a team. And since I had this relationship with Jason, he just kind of asked me, it's kind of out of the blue, like, hey, I know you're doing Draft, but would you be interested in this thing going on at Highrise? And yeah, I was. It was an interesting challenge to take on.
Yeah. Well, one thing I really like about the story, and I read that, in addition to you were talking to him about Draft and promoting that, you were also giving a lot back. You were touching base if you found because you're a programmer, I guess, by trade, and a strong developer. So if you found some security issues with Basecamp, you would ping him and let him know. And by doing this, you're offering value. You're not asking for anything. You're actually giving, which I think so many people need to get better at,
Yeah, and right, exactly. It's, just one of those things I'd reach out to David or Jason or Ryan about random things that I thought could be helpful for them, whether it was an article or, something I saw, or security fixes that I'd find or problems I'd find in something like Basecamp. I'd go to them first. And so, yeah, it was just, it became kind of easy then to have even gotten to that point where I could email Jason out of the blue. It's not that out of the blue, right? So it's it's an easy kind of ask at that point. And And yeah, like I've had a lot of that, back to me. There's been people in my life that have done this really well. A guy named Lachlan, who over the years now, he's just been kind of, sending things to me, asking me questions and being very helpful on social media, et cetera. And then out of the blue, not out of the blue, but like he asked me for an internship. And I was like, oh yeah, of course. Like I know you, it's like, you've been so helpful in getting the word out about draft. Yeah, you want an internship at Highrise? That sounds like a good idea. The kid was like 13. How old was Lachlan when he was 13, I think. Like young kid, I think just getting into high school. I don't know. So it was like crazy. But yeah, he took those same steps, and it was like a very easy process to like ask me and talk to me about becoming an intern. My head of customer support did the same thing. He's been like, he took responsibility of helping people with draft. He'd be in our customer forums on Twitter. If someone had a question, he was the first guy to just be like, hey, here's how you do it. And I never asked him to do that. He just became like this valuable resource in my life. And then one day out of the blue, he just asked me, he's like, well, are there any opportunities like for a job at Draft? And he asked me just at the right time, because it was like, well, not at Draft, but I'm going to be at Highrise. You want to come on to Highrise? And so it was an easy hire. Like, again, just someone who puts himself out there, makes himself valuable to me. It's just an easy relationship then to kind of strengthen and get together.
Totally. And that's real relationship building. That's not, retweeting one of your tweets or, giving one comment on an article and then, okay, now it's time for the ask because I just want something from you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
What was your initial, I guess, reaction? How did it feel when, Jason just one day out of the blue contacts you and he's like, I want to hand the keys of Highrise over to you?
Good. Mixed. Good in a lot of ways. Like, whoa, that's awesome that you trust me to be able to take on a challenge like this. But, not that it added a little bit of stress. I mean, draft was kind of still just kind of in an inflection point, but it was one of those things where I just kind of predicted like, well, I don't know if draft is going to be as big as like Highrise could be. So it's really just a calculated risk. Like, should I kind of take my focus away from draft and apply it to something like Highrise that potentially has a bigger audience and I could, affect more people's lives with. So it was, kind of a calculated risk. I also knew that, Highrise wasn't in its prime anymore. I mean, it was definitely they were bringing me on for kind of like a turnaround job. It wasn't like I was getting put into, hey, come on, the ship is great. It's more like, yeah, it's been a while since we've updated the app. People are not happy. When Basecamp announced that Highrise, the first time that they were going to focus on just Basecamp, people assumed Highrise was shutting down. So there was a ton of just reviews that were just like, Highrise is sunsetting, Highrise is sunsetting. And none of that was true, but it hasn't helped us in terms of marketing and kind of brand awareness. There's still reviews that we're asking people to take down about Highrise sunsetting. So it was going to be a challenge, but it was one that it's like, I don't know, like I love figuring problems out. I mean, that's why I continue to start businesses. None of this is easy. So this just represented like another really interesting challenge to see if I could revive Highrise the brand and kind of get this thing back into, something that, is a very viable business.
That's so interesting. I never really thought about it that way, that, it wasn't like you said, you're just being handed this smooth running machine that's just rocket shipping and you're like, hey, you want to like, the work's done. You want to just sit in the captain's chair. It's like, as we all know, CRM is a very competitive business. I'm sure you know more than anyone. And yeah, it's easy to kind of, for a product like Highrise that wasn't really, you could tell was not Basecamp's core focus for many years, that competition was starting to get fierce. So it was almost like you're, Chef Gordon Ramsay and it's time to like get this restaurant back on course, right?
Yeah, I mean, right. So, giving me Highrise was actually just dropping in my lap like two really challenging problems. One, the product had gotten stale. Customers weren't happy with, how it's improved over the years. Things have improved in the world of the web, but they haven't improved with Highrise. And two, Basecamp was going to just turn off their like marketing funnel, right? I mean, it was like they wanted to focus just on Basecamp. Now all of a sudden, here's a challenge to make people aware of Highrise. So two huge challenges. And so, yeah, I mean, initially, like, as soon as we hit the ground, like, it was like, we need to revive the momentum in the product. And so we did everything we could just to get features announced as fast as we could. And we started sending out a newsletter every 2 weeks. The goal was just every 2 weeks, we're going to send out a newsletter and tell everybody all the cool stuff that we just added or improved, even if it was just small. We just wanted to kind of get a momentum back in people's, vision, that it's like, man, okay, no, they're serious. Like, they're back and they're fixing things and improving our problems. We took on even little things like improve the resolution of images in the product, or make this thing just like one less click, and then we added some big stuff, but it was like, no, let's just focus on momentum for a while.
Right.
And so that was, I think we've done a really good job with that. I think customers look to us and they're really happy with the improvements we've made. The marketing stuff is still a challenge. It's still kind of like, well, how do you replace Jason and David and Basecamp, as like the brand, and bring Highrise as like their own kind of powerful brand? It's still a challenge. It's still something that we're trying to figure out and get better at. But it's the kind of part of the game.
Yeah, well, it's so often with SaaS, it's started by the founder goes through the tough period of getting product market fit and getting some initial users and getting it to the point where it is starting to scale. And then it's kind of like the second half of the challenge now is to get it to actually scale and maybe get acquired, IPO, or just keep running it forever. And so it's kind of, an interesting idea that this wasn't your baby. You didn't start with this, but you're kind of now in sort of that after product market fit stage where your job is to come in and improve and scale,
Yep. Yeah. And it has been. So there's some interesting stuff that's come out of that. It's like, Jason and David built this product largely for themselves. I mean, it was really just a way for them to share things like, did you talk to the lawyer? Did you talk to this reporter? Did you sign the contract with our landlord? Like, if you look in even some of the old communication they had when they built Highrise, it was largely for just the two of them to kind of coordinate contacts. But since then, this thing has really become a CRM, and it's for sales, it's for leads, it's for people trying to sell a lead to get money and make a deal. And that's never how they used it. Basecamp's never done deals. They've always just been back in the day they used to, but not when they made Highrise. When they made Highrise, they'd already given up their consulting business. They were, largely just using this as coordination on contact. So the product itself had kind of like gotten out of their original vision. And so bringing me on, right? I mean, that's even like another level of like abstraction where it's just like, I don't know you don't know who's using Highrise. I don't know who's using Highrise. So like, it's been a challenge to kind of figure that out. Like, who is it? Like, it's not people who look like Jason and David. We do that. And so it's been a challenge to kind of like get to the core of who uses Highrise, why do they use Highrise. We did these jobs to be done interviews. Jobs to be done is this kind of a fancy term. If you want to study up on this, a good book is like Clayton Christensen's work and Innovator Solution. He's got another one called Competing Against Luck that talks about this methodology. And it's really, you find the job that people are hiring things for. People don't, they don't buy a Snickers bar because they want, just chocolatey dessert. They buy a Snickers bar because they're solving a problem in their life. They're hiring it to solve hunger. But a Milky Way, totally different job, right? It's for dessert. When you start interviewing people, you realize like, oh man, yeah, Snickers and Milky Way, they're not candy bars. One is like a hunger satiation device. The other one is like a reward for, something good I did today. And when you start learning that, so we needed to do that. We took, with the help of Ryan Singer at Basecamp, we interviewed a bunch of people at Highrise, and we started discovering, why do people even use Highrise? Like, it's not just for sharing contacts anymore. It's not for coordination. It's for leads. And it's specifically for people who needed like the fastest thing they could get started with today. We started realizing like, yeah, that's our rock. That's our strength. Like, you use Salesforce Find Tool if you need all sorts of stuff and you need all the reports, but you use us if you need like this thing on now and no learning curve. And yeah, it took a while to get to that point, but I think we finally have figured out like where we're really good and why people need us. But it wasn't, I didn't come into this business knowing that. It took a lot of figuring out in interviews and talking to customers.
It's great that you did that, and I'm sure probably it had been a little while since, like you said, Jason and David had done all that hardcore customer development and really picked up the phone and talked to customers. It's such a great starting point, and I'm doing this myself for my SaaS business where, just looking at your especially higher value customers, the ones that are on higher tier accounts, and going, like, who are these people? Why are they signing up to this? What is it about the product that they find valuable? And kind of sticking by that product philosophy. It sounds like, and maybe it's one of the reasons why Jason initially brought you in, that you guys share very similar product philosophies. You're not trying to build the next Salesforce.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it just feels like something kind of natural. I mean, yeah, I grew up, reading books like Getting Real and Getting Real turned into Rework, and it's been something that's always sort of made sense to me. Like when I started my first business at Y-Combinator, I wasn't going for the thing that was going to become the next $1 billion thing. Like I wanted to solve a problem. I wanted to be profitable. I wanted to, know I was making a difference, a valuable difference, but still, be able to lead, and be sustainable. Like I didn't want to be this thing where like, okay, now we need the next round of funding to stay alive. And so, yeah, with Highrise too, it's like, there's a bunch of different ways we could have approached this. We've kind of grown the team slowly versus, Highrise makes millions of dollars in revenue. We could have easily brought in like 30 people to run this thing, but it's not how I want to do things. I like the small teams. I like even just apart from, how you run a business. Like I really enjoy working with people. And so it's like, I don't want to run a team of 30 people that we don't know each other. And maybe we'll get to that point eventually. But no, I wanted to move slowly and get to know the people that we're bringing into the business and get to know them and their significant others and their kids. And I don't know. For me, it's I don't know. I know a lot of people rail against this. And even Jason David actually just wrote this post. Maybe David did. It was like, businesses aren't families. And that's true. I mean, I'm never going to say that. But I really do. I don't want everything to be so like, I don't know, aloof from my employees. It's like, we can support them and their families and I don't know. There's something more meaningful there than just this employer boss scenario to me.
I think you're right. Maybe they're not quite family because obviously at some point employees will leave, they'll move on and maybe find a better opportunity. But you always hope that you'll stay connected, that nobody leaves on bad terms, because you never know, down the road they might need to come back, or maybe they work somewhere that ends up being a customer of your product. So as long as you keep those connections close and just generally treat people right, then it doesn't have to be that cold, aloof relationship, right?
Right. And, this is crazy. This is my pie in the sky idea for any company I run. There's a company, and I forget who they are, but there's a company, and there's more than one, who they have a policy, no one gets fired. So, like, they bring you on, and they do whatever it takes to keep you. Like, if you don't fit into a role, I mean, granted, like, you're probably going to get fired for gross negligence or doing something really bad, but if you're trying and you just don't fit, they will find something else for you to do. It's like the leaders at that organization have decided it's their responsibility now. They've seen you, they've recognized potential in you. We all have potential to like do something, right? Like maybe it wasn't the fit that we brought you in for, where you're interfacing with customers and doing this, but you're human and you clearly have creativity in you. They find something else for you to do, and I would love it if we could do that, but it's not easy. I've had to let go of people here. I've had to, things haven't worked out with everyone here at Highrise either. And it's tough to like have a no firing policy when you only have when you're trying to create like a founding team of only like, a handful of people. So I don't think it's possible when you only have like 5 people, 7 people, but it's something I aspire to. It's one of those goals. I really wish I could get to a point where, we're careful enough in our hiring practices, but I don't know. Well, maybe it's just a dream.
It's certainly a better aspiration than the typical Silicon Valley approach of fire fast, People say fire
Right.
fast all the time, and yeah, it's something I personally don't agree with. We've actually, in 3-4 years, haven't fired anybody from Proposify. And I think it's a lot of those same reasons is that, yeah, employees might have some issues. There might be some areas they need to work on. But generally, if you've taken the time to hire carefully and kind of gone through a good hiring process, there shouldn't be any reason why, like you said, unless gross negligence, somebody broke the law, somebody did something horrible, there's just generally no reason to be like, you were a little slow today, get lost. We'll find someone else.
Right.
Yeah. And
right, exactly.
And so, I mean, I want to kind of carrying along this idea of personal warmth, I guess. I don't really know how to describe it, but you talked a lot about this. You had a great post where you talked about Web 3.0 and how we're getting out of, even though everybody talks about bots and automation, we're sort of almost going back to this one-on-one, like in the olden days when you think of parents going to the shop and knowing the name of the guy who fixes their shoes and having a conversation, like this very hands-on, one-on-one kind of approach. Can you kind of talk about that a bit?
Yeah. So, if you look at a lot of industries, most industries kind of go through these waves. And so, going back to coffee. So, back before there was mass-produced coffee, people would take coffee beans and have to roast them and grind them at home, which is pretty crazy. It was a laborious process that just took forever. And so eventually, a guy figures out, wait a minute, I could do this. I could, roast these beans and grind them up and put them in a can and sell them. And people won't have to do this a lot of work at home. And they loved it. The quality wasn't as good. It wasn't as fresh, but they loved it. Eventually, they invented vacuum packing so they could do this and the stuff would stay on the shelf for a year or longer. That company eventually became Folgers. They invented basically the coffee industry, that first wave of the coffee industry. And most coffee people who study coffee, they talk in waves. That was the first wave of coffee, mass production of beans. The second wave was when Starbucks showed up. Starbucks was okay, we've got beans and we've got everybody drinking coffee. It's not very good coffee, but you know what? We can give you a bunch of options and we can get you out of your house and come over to our beautiful restaurants and drink coffee there and listen to jazz music and, we'll put lots of fancy ingredients in it. And that was the second wave, adding on this new kind of little elegance to coffee. The third wave, a lot of historians will credit companies like Intelligentsia and Stumptown. If you go to Intelligentsia right now, it's where we get our coffee from all the time. If you go to Intelligentsia, there you'll see most of the time right there on their by the cashier is a postcard of where the coffee comes from, and not just where the coffee comes from, who the farmer is making the coffee. We're now getting into these personal relationships. There was a guy actually today, I just went to Intelligentsia today, there was a guy passing out samples of coffee, I believe from his I don't even know who the guy was. He might have been someone who came from the farm that Intelligentsia is buying beans from. But he was passing out samples. He's trying to meet people. He was greeting them at their tables. And coffee, the third wave of coffee is basically becoming so close. This artisanal thing where where your beans come from, who's making it. They know my name at Intelligentsia. They treat me like this, I'm royalty there practically. And that's it. And you see these waves everywhere. You see them in beer. You see them in bakeries. Bakeries used to be all about mass producing loaves of bread. And now we're watching television shows where there are celebrity bakers. We care about one baker. They're so important to us, this one person.
And there's a 2.0 for bread too, because I think there was a time where there was an explosion in bread makers. People would buy bread makers to make at home. And now nobody does that. If you want fresh bread, you go to the bakery that's local, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we see that in this industry on the web. Back when Craigslist came out, that was Web 1.0. Craigslist was great. It brought all these things. You used to, go to the laundromat and have listings, inside a bulletin board at the laundromat of, hey, I'm trying to sell a TV or whatever. Like, that's gone. That's all on Craigslist now, all the classified. It's no longer in the newspaper. Everything's on the web, but it's awful, right? Craigslist is kind of a terrible experience, but it's wonderful because it took everything that was, difficult, and it made it basically mass produced. And then Web 2.0 came along, and that was when people were like, you know what, usability is important. And so they started applying things like, no, we got to design this well and make it pretty, and we got to make it easy to understand, right? And to me, that's like Starbucks, right? Like, that was the second wave of the web. That was Starbucks being like, no, let's take the stuff that we've mass produced on the web and make it nice. And now I think we're in Web 3.0. I think it's like we're starting to form relationships. Like, you are now not just following. A lot of people don't just follow Highrise because they love simple CRM. They follow Highrise because I open up about how we run things, and they want to know what's going on in my life. And a lot of people use Basecamp because they care about Jason and David. Sure, Basecamp's a great product, no doubt, but I think they've elevated to the point where, like, no, you tune in because you love to kind of be part of this environment they've created. And that's what I think like Web 3.0 is all about. And I think more of us need to think about that. Like, okay, if you're having trouble competing because like everything seems so like mass produced right now and everybody's doing it, well, recognize that I think your customers out there want that next, the next level, which is like making a relationship with you, knowing the people who are behind the products they use. I don't know. I think that's the next thing to crack. If you're looking to compete with some of these businesses, think about how you're going to compete on like the personal level. How like you're going to open up your business and make friends with your customers and show your personality, not just come off as like this anonymous business that can't be approached.
Yeah, I think of it very similar to how especially women treat their hairdressers or their stylists. They have this relationship with them. Every time they go and interact, on a business level with them, they're sharing stories about themselves. They're talking about maybe, things that are happening in their life, good or bad. And then when that stylist leaves the business and goes to another salon, it's the customer doesn't care so much about the business. They care about the person. And it's kind of, it is similar when you look at especially small startups that are bootstrapped versus large ones that are well-funded and have a lot of, typically the big ones, the ones that are on their third round of venture capital, they're not on that same plane. They're in a different spot where they're hiring big sales teams. They're spending a lot of money on ads, and that's their acquisition strategy. Whereas the smaller companies can afford to have their CEOs get on the phone with customers, write a blog where they share, any personal things that are going on in their life. So, I mean, you kind of see that as being really a competitive advantage against some of the larger competitors that can outspend you.
Sure, absolutely. And just to go back, like you brought up like hairdressers, like that's my relationship. I mean, I go see a fancy salonist, hairstylist, and like I have followed her. She's left the business and she started her own business. She's been on the vlog. She's been on multiple posts of mine. And it's the same thing. Like she's created this relationship with me, and she's killing it. And I don't want to do business anymore with just some random, nothing cutting my hair. Like I cherish these relationships. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's the way to compete. And I don't know, like I even think the bigger people could have done it. Like I look at Apple. We were talking about Apple when we started this talk, and like, Apple's going to be this $1 trillion corporation. I'm not some analyst who knows giant businesses extremely well, but it's like, I wonder if Apple couldn't have already been a $1 trillion business if they opened themselves up just a little bit more. Like I know they want to be like this company of secrecy, and that's fine for their products. But like me, and I know most of the planet had this like affinity for who Steve Jobs was, and you see it in the amount of books, the amount of movies that have come out. There's no less than 3 movies about Steve Jobs, and he's a very just recent figure in our history. Like there's this appetite to know who Steve was when he was alive, now maybe even more so now that he's gone, that yeah, I know that you know, I don't recommend, like, if this is against how you want to be, don't do it. Steve was a very private person. But I think if Steve wanted to and he had opened up his life to people more, we would have eaten it up. You know, we would have bought even more products. We would have been like, you know, even joined even tighter that cult of Apple.
Yeah.
Even now, I think they have an opportunity to do this with Tim Cook, with Joni Ives, that they don't. And again, like, I'm not saying everybody's got to do this. I'm not on some high horse. But I think if Joni and Tim Cook wanted to kind of be more open, not about what they're making, like, keep all that stuff secret, that's fine. But, you know, talk to us, Tim, about like what it's like running this business after the visionary left. And I don't know, like, I would be more invested in Apple than I am today. I mean, I'm, you know, I look around, but if Tim were to kind of open up to me on a human level, I think I'd have more loyalty than I do today.
Yeah,
but
I can see that. And I mean, on the other side of the coin, you could say that maybe it's because Steve Jobs was this very enigmatic character, a little bit mysterious. Most of what we know about him is through third party. It almost made us more interested, more wanting to buy those books and watch those interviews. So I mean, yeah, it's really, it's a tough thing. I also think of people like Martin Scorsese, who I'm a big fan of as a film director. And one thing that I love about him, and this is to your point, is that he's so open about film history, film knowledge. He talks about his own movies and things that inspired it, and things that he did well, and experiments he tried that didn't work. And he's just incredibly open and very generous with his knowledge. And so it makes me, as a film lover, watch anything that he puts out. I'll go to the movie theaters, even if it's trash. I know that he's always experimenting and always sharing that process with people. And I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And like another interesting example that just happened recently, I was picking my daughter up from school. I've got a 3-year-old daughter. She's full of challenges at that 3-year-old level. You know, some days she's not behaving very well. And I wanted to reward her. She was like especially being very awesome. This one day I was picking her up from school, and I was like, I'm going to get her a treat. She loves these macaroons. I think it's actually pronounced macarons in French. It's like that French pastry that's made out of like almonds, I think, crushed almonds or whatever, ground almonds. I don't know much about macaroons, right? Like I know they're sweet. I've never bought one before in my life until my daughter started enjoying them. And even to me now, like, a macaroon is a macaroon usually at most places. Like, I'm not a connoisseur of macaroons. So there's a place right near where we go. We go in front of it every day on the way home from school. And I was thinking, like, I want to get her a treat. I want to get her a macaroon. It's like her favorite thing. And I decided not to go there. Instead, we went out of our way to this other bakery to buy their macaroons. And it's like it's kind of a pain in the butt because it's not in the way. Like, I could have easily just stopped in the store, gotten the macaroon, and done our business. But I go to this other bakery because, like, the people there have formed this relationship with us. Like, they have, like, we go into this bakery. They've been around for a couple years. It's a place called, like, Lakeview Kitchen and Pantry. It's in our neighborhood, and we know the mom and the daughter who run this place. And that whenever we go in, they tell us about, like, what's going on in their lives, some of the challenges of running the bakery, deals that have fallen through for them. I mean, they're totally open about what's going on, good and bad. And we share stuff too about, what's going on. And so we have formed this bond that keeps me loyal to their business. Even though I don't really give a shit about macaroons, I'm going to buy it from them just because now they're friends.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's a powerful force that you don't do it because you want to manipulate people. You do it because it's fun. It's fun to know the people I'm doing business with. And I don't know. I saw it when my dad was an entrepreneur. He formed these relationships with people. And I don't know. It's important to me.
And it's so funny that now, as SaaS founders, where software as a service is maybe one of the more impersonal products that anybody uses. It's not it's not something you eat. It's not something you wear. It really doesn't reflect on you as a person the way a lot of products do. It's, if you want to boil it down to its essence, it's forms and buttons and a database that you're interacting with. And yet it's so funny that people are now, and maybe they have been for a while, forming these bonds with their SaaS products. Like, I'm like an example, I've used Campaign Monitor as my email marketing tool since maybe 2004, when it was, a couple guys in Australia running a consulting business, started this email marketing thing, within the first couple of years I started using it, still am today. Even though a lot of people, MailChimp's very popular and it integrates with a lot of services, I don't know. I can't get away from Campaign Monitor.
Sure.
And maybe it's that reason. I've used them for so long and I feel like I want to keep going on that journey with them, even though they don't know who I am.
Yeah. No, I agree. And so like that's been important to like what we do. Like you just said, like these SaaS software companies, everything is about forms and most of it's all automated away, right? I mean, most smart SaaS companies are doing things like you sign up, you get an automated email. 5 days later, you're going to get another automated email, and you're going to get a whole train of automated communication, and that's fine. I mean, that we do it because it improves retention. But I mean, it's so people can smell that is not personal. They can smell that these are robots talking to me now. And so like that's even just something that we try to do a little differently here. Like we try to inject, we have the templates that we send out too. They're just, kind of like your standard drip campaign. But every day we try to customize it just a little bit, even if it's just a sentence or two that talks about, what's going on in our lives right now. Even if it's just the weather. Sometimes I try to mention like my daughter's sick or we had a great weekend with her and she just had her 3rd birthday. And then the responses that come back are awesome. I get these replies from people that are like, I think this is a robot, but this is great. And they just start telling me about their family. They tell me about their kid. They tell me about their 8-month-old that they just had. They're up all night. And I don't know, it's forming these conversations that I think we need to probably be doing more of because, as a SaaS business, it's even harder to have like a personal relationship with your customer because it's just all text. We're just behind robotic text.
Yeah, and we're seeing the world go more and more that way with AI and automation and bots. So it's kind of neat to go the opposite route. I know one thing that I do is, and I do use some automation for this, is we target accounts after a certain amount of time they've been customers, and then it's an email from me that is completely canned, but it's honest and it's saying, hey, I want to jump on the phone with you and let you see how you like the product. Do you like it? What can we improve? Happy to have a chat. Here's my calendar, book a call. And here's my Skype address. And, not everybody takes you up on it, but the ones that do get on the phone and they're like, oh, I can't believe, I'm talking to the CEO of this company and this person's willing to have a one-on-one chat for 15 minutes. It's very powerful.
Yep. Yeah. And it's surprising how many people aren't doing that still. And I think it is a huge competitive advantage. Like you said earlier, like smaller businesses can do. Like we're being eaten up by these like giant companies these days that are like acquiring everything, and they none of them are doing this well, like relationship building with their customers. And heck yeah, it's a great opportunity for small upstarts to be like, well, no, like let me talk and have cool relationships. And you can see that with like when like GitHub was getting started. Now maybe they're not as good at it, but it was like they had meetups in all these places. You could go and hang out at a bar and meet the founders and meet the people making the software that you care about. And I don't know. There's special moments when you get to kind of partake in a company that's opening up like that.
Totally. And you're opening up a lot on your vlog. You have been posting a daily video on YouTube. When did you start doing that?
So I've been attracted to YouTube for a while, just because it's like, it seems like all the kids, all they want to do is YouTube. Like my daughter, she doesn't watch like any TV. We don't ever turn on the TV. What she wants to watch is YouTube. Like
same with my kids.
Right. Yeah. People playing with toys on YouTube. And so it's just like, wait a minute, I got to understand this. And then you start hearing from like Mark Zuckerberg talking about how like he thinks the Facebook, I'm not going to get this quote right, but it was like he thinks the Facebook feed is going to be like 80 or 90% video in the near future, right? It's like, and obviously like Instagram becoming more and more video and the Snapchats and whatever.
You know what I like about that? Just I apologize for interrupting. Is that we're talking about going back in cycles to artisanal days. I heard somebody once say that social media now, we're actually going back to the silent film era because every video you watch is muted and you're looking at it on your phone in public and you actually don't want any volume. You just want to read the text, the captions of what's on the screen. Anyway, I had to throw that out there, but keep going.
That's really interesting. I got to think about that a little more. That's cool. I haven't really heard that kind of perspective on it. I like that. But so no, I mean, I've just been attracted. Like, I had to figure out like what is going on with video and YouTube, and like, because I feel like, you know, I don't want to be stale, or I don't want to, you know, get old and crusty in what I understand about the internet. And like, I spent so much time writing, so I really want to, like, I got to learn video. What's up with video? And gradually, I basically, at first, I was just taking something I wrote and basically read it to the camera. You know, from memory, it was like, let me tell you about something I just wrote. And it was interesting, but it was just watching me talk, right? It was like a talking head reciting something you could have just read about. And then it was like, okay, no, I want it to be more interesting now. You know, I don't know, I started studying like what other YouTubers were doing, especially the popular ones, you know, from like, obviously the Casey Neistat is one of the celebrities out there, but also like the Jake Pauls and stuff, and Logan Pauls. They're very controversial figures, but like, you know, I want to know what they're doing. And then like Philip DeFranco has got the news show. Like, they're all just, it's very interesting to me. And it was like, well, I want to see if I can produce like daily content. I mean, I was doing it kind of weekly for a while, and then all of a sudden I was like, no, like I'm gonna take a crack. I think it was January 1st of this year. I was like, I'm gonna take a crack at doing this daily. I don't know how successful. I don't think I'm gonna be successful at doing this, but let me try. And I was successful doing it at first, and then I stopped for all sorts of reasons. Like I got slower at the uploads. Like a lot of it was like I don't have time to put. I felt like the videos were getting better because I was like putting more practice. I was putting more effort into the edits and the filming, and I was studying more how people do this well. But then it was making it harder to get them done daily. So then I stopped, and then I was only doing them like weekly, sometimes like every 2 weeks. And I was like, you know what? And then I felt bad because it was like, one, I think people really like the consistency of YouTube. Like some of their biggest people they tune into, they want them there every day. It's like comfortable, right? You know that you're going to tune in every day and watch another Logan Paul video or whatever, and like you feel good because it's there's some consistency there. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go back to daily. I want to be there daily for everybody. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. So now it's like I'm back to daily videos. Some of it is like the stuff that I try to edit together from footage about my day and thoughts that I have about the stuff around me. You know, I try to keep it about psychology and business and marketing, stuff I learned about my kid. She's in it a lot. And then a lot of them are just live videos of just me blabbing about something I think is important. But yeah, I open up a lot about the challenges of just being a dad and parent and stuff. Like you'll see my kid throwing up and crying, and one Friday night I'm trying to get a splinter out of my kid's foot. Like it's all there. It's all in the vlog.
That's
you
cool.
Can see, yeah. Thank you.
People should check that out. So that's, I believe they go on YouTube and look up your name, Nathan Kontny.
Yeah, just youtube.com/Nathan Kontny.
And you're also blogging at your personal blog, ninjasandrobots.com.
Yep.
And of course, people should check out Highrise if they're in the market for a CRM. Is there anywhere else on the web you want people to check you out?
No, I mean, Twitter's one of the best places. I obviously Twitter's like my syndication spot. If you want to know what I'm up to, Twitter's a good place. So I'm at just Nate Kontny at Twitter.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, Nathan. It was awesome.
Thanks for having me. These were great. Good chat.